to be raised. This all falls into comprehensive immigration reform. The third platform is a pathway to citizenship. So there's about 11 million people that are undocumented already here living in the US. You can be undocumented for a number of reasons. Your parents can come in legally, get a green card, and you age out by the time that the application comes through. You could be someone who's come in from the southern border when you were 3 years old and you are a beneficiary of DACA. So there are all types of different people who are undocumented, who have no way to get to citizenship, get to voting, get to advocacy. So those are the 3 platforms that we stand on, and those are what we push for. So one of the things and the ways that we help people connect, particularly in terms of communication, is a platform that we have for story sharing called Built by Immigrants. And we have a website called builtbyimmigrants.com. And this allows people to come in and share their story. And through that, and our website Push for Reform, you can specifically do and use advocacy tools to get to your congressional district staff. So you can write your own story and we'll publish it on our website. We have a Facebook account that has about 600,000 viewers. We have obviously a very robust Twitter account as well. So we're very advanced in social media. We have big audiences that we can project these stories to, and then we can connect them and constituents to their congressmen and senators. So what I'm really here to talk about is how you can share your story. So I was going to show you on the projector some of the stories that we have, for example, but that's not happening. But I will tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to this position. So I am originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I was born and raised there. My grandmother is Hungarian, and she lived in Hungary at the time that the Nazis invaded, and she fled, and she was about 16, so she had to drop out of high school to run from the Nazis with her mother. And she ended up hiding in the basement of an Italian sculptor for about a year before she could get into Italy and get on a boat to come to the US to Ellis Island in New York City. So during that time, she lived in this basement with her mother and a few other people who were seeking refuge there. And the sculptor taught them how to sculpt. So about a year later, my grandmother and her mom got on a boat to come to Ellis Island. And when they got there, the people at Ellis Island said, "We've already let too many people in, too many refugees, too many immigrants for this year, so you have to go somewhere else for a year." Obviously, she wasn't going to go back to the Nazi invasion, so she went down to Cuba. And she lived in Cuba for a year using the sculpting skills that she had learned from this Italian artist. And she made a living there for a year, supporting her and her mother making sculpture. She specifically did people's chests and face, a lot of celebrity, like elected officials for that time. When she came to the US finally a year later in New York, she had dreams of becoming a doctor, but she had to drop out of school at 16, which made it very difficult to then come back and go into medical school. However, she had an extreme unique skill for being able to sculpt the human face. So she actually went into prosthetics and began developing in this skill to where she could make prosthetic faces for people who had had surgery. Specifically, people who had mouth or jaw cancer who had lost pieces of their face as a result of the cancer. So she's an immigrant who was able to come to the US, make a life, and make serious contributions, specifically like making people whole again, people who had been sick and lost features of their identity. And that was her role here. And my father, on the other hand, is an African-American man who can trace back to Barbados and the slave trade. So both of my parents come from a background where they have been able to make serious contributions to society, but were either treated as second-grade citizens, not allowed the same rights at certain times, or were held back, underestimated because of their status. So the reason that I am in immigration reform is because I believe that there are lots of contributions that people can give if we let them. And the US right now, with the current immigration system, which hasn't been updated since before I was born, needs a facelift, we'll say it that way. And what we're working on is getting comprehensive reform for 2017. And the way that this happens is from constituents like you who live in districts around Colorado to talk to their representatives. And this can come, like I said, in many different types of communication. But one of the things that I do is help you reach them through coordinating events, meetings, like I said. So if you would like to get involved, one of the first things that you can do is share your story on this online platform, like I said. And that's buildbyimmigrants.com. And if you log on, it'll ask you to build up a profile, which is just your name and your email. And you can put in your job, you can add your picture, you can do it as anonymous or as full frontal as you like. And what we look for are stories of what are the contributions that you're making, what are the contributions you want to make. Are you someone who wants to start a business here, but you don't know if you're going to get the lottery? Are you someone who has been educated with US schools and would like to stay and contribute? Do you have a challenging story of maybe missing out on the lottery one time and having to go back to school? We have a partner who has a business down in Centennial in Colorado, who missed the lottery the first year and is now back getting a third master's degree because he can't work without being in school at the moment. So these are all stories that we want to share and spotlight to give people an idea of what's really happening and how we're keeping immigrants in many ways from being able to contribute back to the US. So what I have with me is two instructions on how you can publish your story. Our one-pager, which will tell you a little bit more about our mission, and then a sign-up sheet. If you would like to get involved, you can leave your information with me. I'll get in touch with you, and we'll tell you how you can coordinate, publish your story, how we can get you as the face of immigration reform. Do you have any questions?
So, are you, you guys are aiming to influence the immigration reforming in the next year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So for this election that's coming up, after the inauguration in January, we're going to do a big push for the 100-day promise in the first 100 days. So we'll be flying people into DC to talk to their representatives. We'll be doing all kinds of organizing around what that will look like. But we're pushing for reform to happen, comprehensive reform in 2017.
So I know that for a citizen, their representative always has the obligation to meet their citizens who has voted them. But for example, I personally am a foreigner. I don't think that the representative in Colorado has the obligation to meet me. Can I still apply to meet with him?
Yes, so you don't have to be a citizen to be a constituent. A constituent just means you live in the district. And because you guys may have a potential pathway as well to citizenship, like through HB1 or through H1B to green card to citizenship, and considering you're going to be working, putting into the economy, some of you may want to start businesses in the future, all of those are reasons why they have to listen to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to add, I called Congressman Joey Potter's office once to ask more about some issues I had when I had difficulty to get my driver's license. I was on my F1 visa with the OPT, so it was extremely difficult. I called the office and they have lawyer, they offer some free help. It was really helpful. So I just want to say I have contact them and I was just on my F1 visa, so I believe everybody here can make a difference if we want.
Yes.
And also there's one thing that I want to add is a lot of time I think the congressman or the senator will be really interested in that is for a lot of people who cannot get immigration here, they are high-skilled worker. So whatever they learn in school and they produce for the country, because they cannot stay, they need to go back to their country and contribute back to their home country instead of stay in the US. So a lot of time for when people push for immigration reform is because we want to keep high-skilled work here in the US that are going to produce growth in the US. And so when you talk about constituent, actually, I think people like a lot of people here, they should be the voice that let them know. Because for the people who already are citizens here, they worry less about immigration reform. It is people who are not citizens yet, permanent residents yet. They are the ones that actually will have more say with regard to immigration reform.
Particularly spotting the fact that every high-skilled position actually grows the economy by about 2.6 jobs. So every single one of you going into work can potentially start kind of a chain reaction where you create more growth and create other jobs. Those jobs obviously are not limited to just immigrants, so you create jobs for citizens who already live there, and the creation of jobs for more constituents is something that's very important to congressional delegations.
I have a question.
Yes.
How a Trump presidency might derail this?
So we are not willing to be derailed by a Trump presidency. So Hillary Clinton has made the 100-day promise that she will get comprehensive reform done in 2017. So if she is a winner, then obviously we're going to push for that 100-day promise, like I said. If Trump wins, there is still a window of opportunity, specifically because he has raised the conversation around immigration to be at the top of mind for a lot of people. So because people are talking about it, there is still a position that there are going to be bills passed through, there are going to be continual conversations around immigration, and we still see a window to push for what we need. Furthermore, Trump has not actually come out with any policies, which makes it a little difficult to plan for what he may say versus what he may actually do. However, when policies do arise, if he is elected, we're definitely prepared to move forward with lobbying and other advocacy actions that we need. Furthermore, the reason that we target Congress is because, as many of you may or may not know, in 2013, that is when the last comprehensive bill was put forward, and it went through the Senate and it died in the House. So that's the reason why we spend so much time with Congress. When it died in the House, Obama eventually made an executive action saying we need to do these things for immigration reform regardless. States then sued Obama for executive action. So if Trump was to, first of all, Trump can't make laws, Congress has to make the laws, Congress and Senate. So that's why we focus on those groups, because they're the ones who vote at the end of the day. Even with Trump's policies, Congress has to sign off on it, as does Senate, which is why we target those people and connect constituents to those people. Yes?
I have a question. So at the current immigrant framework, there is a couple of categories. For example, employment-based, family-based, lottery, and probably also we also have a program for the undocumented. So for the comprehensive reform, what kind of category you're going to focus on when you have more general tax?
So the three major categories we focus on are very similar to the Senate bill that died. So one is the security of the border. The other is against deportation. So we're not going to be deporting people who haven't committed a serious felony or crime, who've been here too as well for a certain amount of years. We're also going to push to raise the H-1B cap, like I said. That'll be in the policy. And then the last thing is providing that pathway to citizenship.
Yeah, and I think another thing when I talked to Kaytia last time, she also mentioned there's a new category they are trying to push for, that is for entrepreneur and for people. Yeah, because I think right now for investment, immigration, there is a really high bar, and there is something I think you can mention more about.
So we are in charge of pushing the international entrepreneur rule, which right now, if you know about immigration law, there's a probationary period where certain people can come in without fear of being immediately deported. Under this rule, what we've pushed for is an entrepreneur rule, which means if you are coming to the US and you would like to start a business and you have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of, like, no more than 3 of your co-founders are international, then you can come in, start a business, and not have to worry about being deported. This is a step in the right direction that we've pushed for, and it's under public comment right now, a period comment for the White House. So all of you can go online and read this policy and comment on it, and the White House is reading it on the daily, looking at the updates. But what we're pushing for after that specifically is a startup visa, because right now the rule isn't enough. So with the startup visa, you would be able to come into the country, start your company, grow your company, and you could get on a pathway to citizenship through that. And what that looks like is different than the current investor visa that we have now, because the investor visa is the only way you can come in and start a business. You have to have over $1 million in a targeted area, which makes it really hard for entrepreneurs and startups to come in, because it's a very high bar that they've set. So this would make it more welcoming for entrepreneurs, people who are interested in startups, to come in. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to pass around, there's a sign-up sheet going around, so please put your name on it if you're interested, and I'll reach out to you about things you can do. You can tell me your story, what you're interested in. And then this I'm also going to pass around. These are the directions, so each take 2 pages. This will show you what the website looks like when you go to builtbyimmigrants.com, where you put in your story, where you update your profile. And then behind here are some questions that you can answer to help you write the story.
And one thing I want to share, because I put my story there, a day after I put my story in, my congressman called me and said, can we have a meeting to talk more about that? So they actually read it.
Any other questions?
So I would ask a question is about being an individual versus organizations, because I personally don't have the right to vote, honestly. But when I read the news or stories or maybe some movies, I feel like any candidates would want to are more willing to talk with the organizations versus an individual. For example, we have 20 people here. Say we show up as an organization versus we talk to them each one by one as an individual. How do you see the difference of the influence and the willingness or the factors on their side of considerations?
Sure. So it really depends on each congressman or woman in terms of what they need to hear. And sometimes it's better to come in individually and have people each give their stories, but other times it's good to have an organization meeting, or sometimes it's good to kind of mix and match. So one of our partners right now is the company Self-Score. And Self-Score helps international students develop credit, because that's a real challenge for a lot of students, particularly because you can't develop credit without a credit card, and they make barriers very difficult for international students. So what Self-Score does is they provide very low-risk credit cards for international students specifically. So a meeting with, let's say, Congresswoman DeGette, who is very pro keeping families together, but hasn't been really vocal on the business side. So let's say I bring her 3 students from here who all work in STEM, they're all highly skilled, clearly gonna make some positive contributions to the economy, but they've got a lot of barriers in their way, with the CEO of the company Self-Score, who talks about how their company could grow more, hire people, even in Colorado to work for them, if they could grow their business enough to represent more people, specifically undocumented people or people getting on a pathway to citizenship, more than just students, people who have H-1Bs. So you have to be strategic about who we group together, but there's definitely times when, for example, like a letter campaign, if we do one letter that goes out, it doesn't have a great impact. But if that person in the office gets 15 letters in one day, all individuals, that's a bigger impact than if we had everybody just sign on to it in an organization.
Okay.
But there are other times when like bringing the whole organization to a meeting is helpful too.